about a year ago, I also got diagnosed with adult ADHD, or with ADHD.
Gotcha.
And it explains everything. Back in the day, I like solving hard problems. I like doing stuff that hasn't been done before. But ultimately, what we want to be able to do is help founders grow their businesses and do that in a way that is the right shape capital at the right time. My personal mission is I do like to work with a small number of people so that they can unlock their potential. I don't really like doing it to squillions of people.
Gotcha.
It's just more of a concentrated group of people that really get to fly.
What legacy you're living and leading? Bit of a personal one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Private markets investments are investors can find some real value. I find the best way to learn is learn from someone who's done it before and given it a go. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, host of Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining me here today. On these podcast sessions, we're going to talk through how certain investors have navigated the bumpy road of investing, whether it be through business or investments in general. Thanks for listening today. Welcome to Grow Your Wealth podcast, where we dive deep into the stories behind the success, uncovering the strategies, struggles, and insights from leaders in the world of finance and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we're joined by a true pioneer in the tech and finance world, Matt Allen, CEO and co-founder of Tractor Ventures. Matt's journey from coding to the forefront of fintech innovation exemplifies what it means to drive change, challenge norms, and tirelessly pursue solutions that matter. Today, Tractor Ventures stands as a beacon for tech companies seeking alternative funding routes, having already deployed significant capital across numerous loans. Join us as we delve into Matt Allen's inspiring story, exploring the lessons learned, the hurdles overcome, and the vision that propels Tractor Ventures forward. This is an episode filled with insights, not just for aspiring entrepreneurs, but for anyone looking to make a meaningful impact in their field. Let's get started. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
First point we'll kick off with, just a bit of a potted summary of, what you've been up to, Tractor Ventures, and who you are.
Yeah, right. You want me to go back to the beginning? Tractor Ventures has been a lot of fun over the last 3.5 years, but, way back I started my career in tech in the mid-90s, because I'm old, as a self-taught software developer.
Gotcha.
Back in the day, finished high school doing 3-unit computers in New South Wales, the very first time they ever offered it.
Gotcha.
But it was actually just me going to the library, dial up to the internet, learn how to write code, which was fun. Spent one semester at uni doing business computers where they tried to show me how to use a mouse, and I'm like, I don't think this is for me. And then took my first job in tech at OneNet.
Gotcha.
Back in the day, part of OneTel, the plaything for the Murdoch and those families. That was fun. But ultimately, spent the first half of my career writing code, self-taught code, a lot of open source software, running a lot of the open source communities here in Sydney and Melbourne for the last decade. And then when I decided I didn't want to write code anymore, turned into a technical recruiter and actually build out the engineering teams for scale-ups down here in Melbourne. Moved to Melbourne in 2013, and so realestate.com.au, Redbubble, Envato, Jetstar, and it was quite an interesting time in my life for two reasons. Is that I'd been running those developer communities for a long time, 5 or 6 years. So the CTOs were my mates, and so were the software developers who wanted the jobs. So I just sat there in the middle going, hey, I can help you, with your career. And that was a really good time.
Gotcha.
It was also pretty lucrative. Started angel investing, over a decade ago. I made some pretty good bets along the way.
Great.
Post that, went to Amazon, AWS, worked on the venture and capital team, which was really exciting because I got to learn from people around the world.
Gotcha.
I got to hang out with all the VCs and their scale-up portfolio companies, being the guy from Amazon who had lots of credits for them and lots of leverage.
Yep.
And it was actually then when I found the problem that I wanted to solve at Tractor.
Gotcha.
Which was venture capital is such an exciting, funding mechanism for tech companies.
Yep.
But it's for so few of them in reality. And then I used to meet all the rest of them when I was at Amazon, who I was able to deploy $100,000 US of cloud credits into anyone's account that I deemed fit.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that was fun. So I was able to sort of, these people who basically made investments, that's $100,000 straight to the bottom line often. So my time at Amazon sort of opened my eyes to all the rest of the tech-enabled growing companies that were not VC-backed. And, they had these struggles, which was like, I'm not big enough or fast enough for venture, but I'm not a small lifestyle business. I'm not selling candles from Byron Bay. Like, I've got a proper business here. We're doing millions in rev.
Yeah.
And I'd really love to grow faster, but I can't, the capital, the banks don't understand me because I'm a software business and I'm running cash flow neutral. I'm growing.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I really need to grow this business, but I don't sell equity because, the angels aren't sort of there. They've got the same mandate that a VC does.
Yep.
And that's why we started Tractor. So we started that December 1st, 2020.
Gotcha.
Right in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, and I can absolutely see the logic, right, as being a founder myself. You're effectively protecting the founder's equity in many respects, aren't you, the way the products that you've got?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? So you're effectively providing exposure to debt or access to debt that may in the past not have been able to get access to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And traditionally these businesses, are misunderstood by the banking sector. And, we're called Tractor Ventures. It's a funny name. Initially, the memo that I wrote that started the whole thing was, in venture land, in venture capital land, everyone talks about unicorns.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's just bullshit. They don't exist. What's a better analogy is rockets and tractors. So the rockets are very exciting. They've got great big missions, but they're expensive to build, hard to land and blow up quite often.
For sure.
And a tractor is more consistent and reliable, and they just keep going. And, if you tell a farmer you're going to take his tractor off him, he's probably going to be upset.
Yeah.
So that was the analogy, right? That's why we call it Tractor Ventures. And, we're not anti-venture. In fact, we lend to a bunch of venture-backed companies right now. But there's the initial asset classes I described, it was like not spicy enough for venture, too spicy for banks.
Yeah, gotcha.
And founders who are running great businesses with great margins, good growth, really good teams solving customer problems, who just couldn't get access to capital.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I love the name Tractor. As a part-time farmer and a bad farmer, I love my tractor.
Yeah.
I'll be up on the weekend slashing the paddock, so I get it, right?
They're versatile. They're reliable. They're dependable.
Correct. They plod along.
Yeah. They just
It's
keep
exceptional.
going.
Now, it's a little bit of a step back. You taught yourself coding. Why do you think you did that? Like, was it you enjoyed it? Was it a challenge, or how did you start there?
In last year, mid last year, about a year ago, I also got diagnosed with adult ADHD or with ADHD,
gotcha.
and it explains fucking everything basically.
Yeah, gotcha.
Back in the day, I like solving hard problems. I like doing stuff that hasn't been done before. At that particular point, the focus part of the ADHD was very good. You disappear down rabbit holes and code things up and really learn how to sort of do things. And back then, bearing in mind the first web browser came out in '93.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like that was like Mosaic, back in Netscape.
Yeah.
So like the web was brand new. So there wasn't a lot of, existing literature on how to do this stuff. So it was very much view source, copy, paste, build things, understand how it all works. And the modern view of web apps and so forth was right at the nexus. So right at the beginning there.
Yeah, gotcha.
So it was just hard and interesting, and that really made my brain light up. So
gotcha.
Now that I know what I know about myself, it explains why there'd be days disappeared down coding rabbit holes, building things back then.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. So is that the starting point of becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was interesting. So the very first thing I did in technology was ran a hosting company. So, this was before Amazon, before any cloud. I had a couple of machines that were sitting on a desk inside a ISP that was at Circular Quay. Plugged in the thing, and I ran 2 servers and I hosted websites. And I actually did a bunch of work for the music industry. So I ran Grinspoon's website for ages. I owned grinspoon.com.au in my name because nobody knew how to buy it, so I just bought it for myself. I did stuff for music festivals like Homebake, and that was kind of where I was able to sort of combine 2 things I love, which is local music plus my nerd skills.
Gotcha.
And I just gave it to them. And, I remember once they what can we do for you? And they bought me a digital camera.
It's pretty good.
Rock up to the Annandale, take photos one night, go home, upload them that night. And next thing you know, those photos online. This is late 90s before this thing really existed. That and access all area passes to, to gigs was pretty much how you keep a 20-year-old excited about writing code for you.
Probably helped you build up a bit of a network too, right? Connections.
Yeah. It's interesting. The music industry and the early stage, the investing industry are not dissimilar. There's different actors that sort of play similar roles. A&R guys looking for new talent. Record labels are like VCs. There's a whole bunch of analogies there.
Yeah, gotcha. How about the top 3 people who influence you the most in early life and why, or even late life, even yesterday?
They're not famous. There was a family friend that came along when I was in my mid-teens, so I was still at high school, who had a computer, and he was like a business guy, and he just sort of let me do stuff, whether it was playing games or write code, and was kind of interested in what I was doing. Didn't necessarily have the answers, but certainly was entertaining, and with my chatty little ADHD question brain, sort of answered some questions.
Yeah.
So his name was Phil. He's still a family friend, and was just that person who, I guess, instead of going, hey, like, stop talking about those annoying computer things you talk, tell me more.
Yeah, it's good.
So I think that sort of gave me a little bit of a springboard to go, maybe there's something here that's not just annoying. My co-founders of Tractor, zooming right back to the other end, April and Jody, they're very good at what they do, and I'm inspired because they do the shit I just can't do. I hate it. It is. April coined a term for herself called B&I, boring and important. She loves that. It allows me to go off and look after the side of the business similar to you, which is, capital and strategy, and it's really great. And then Jodes just runs growth, and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, watching the growth of Lighter Capital has been impressive. But looking at you guys, how you've grown, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, it's funny when I met you and I met the iPartners team, they were talking about terms that I'd never heard before: securitization, wholesale lending, multi-layered trust. And now I think I can talk pretty confidently out to the market about that stuff. And a lot of it was just being able to absorb from you. And iPartners has been there with us for a long time now, and it's been I think watching you grow your business in lockstep with me growing mine has been really interesting. Yeah,
it's very good. Now, 2 to 3 pivotal moments.
Yeah, I reckon, so my first startup was in 99, and I exited that in 2005. So went for 6 years, had a co-founder. It was a SaaS company before SaaS was anything. It was a website, effectively, that had a database behind it. And it was pivotal because we didn't have any shareholders, but we did borrow a bunch of money. In fact, borrowed it from my co-founder's parents, who were retired. I think it was like 400 grand. And we ended up selling that to a new directors that came in and sort of took it over and sort of grew it. But I paid back that money, and I felt like even though after 6 years I'd barely been paid anything, I didn't walk away with anything. I walked away debt-free, but I'd learned a lot around, risk, the ability to take some risk, the ability to sort of stick to what I'm doing. Also for me, that 6 years is a long time, and that, that grinding stuff out is probably not what I'm geared for. I'm really good at 0 to 1, maybe 0 to 3. But when things get into BAU and you're kind of, people are depending on this thing to just keep going and to not change too much anymore, it's really difficult for me to stay super focused on that stuff.
And how do you solve that? So you bring people around you, or?
That's how I solve it now. I know how it works. It's definitely that. It's definitely that my true belief is that everyone, and maybe it's a projection of me. My true belief is that everyone's only good at 1 or 2 things, and then you get massive diminishing returns from 3 onwards. So like getting people to stick to their 1 or 2 things is how you keep people engaged. And for me, right at the beginning of Tractor was like, I really don't do operations. I really sort of not even a really good people manager. So Jody has taken, runs the team and runs growth. And April looks after, credit and all the policies and the procedures we need to run a lending business. Frees me up to do the 1 or 2 things I'm good at, which is think about what's over the horizon and make sure we don't run out of money. Which are my 2 things.
That's smart. Yeah, well, it makes sense. It must be tough at the start for a CEO. Starting the business, you end up kind of doing everything. So it's how you transition to working out what you're good at, what you're not, and bringing the people to fill those gaps. But at the start, I guess, you're kind of doing things you're probably not that good at, but you have to, right? It's part of the grind.
And I tip my hat to founders who don't have other co-founders, who just can't, who have to do all the things. I remember when I raised our very first equity round, a mate of mine, a guy called Guy Pearson, who runs a company called Ignition, which is a big scale company. It was the last thing I coded as a professional developer before I sort of put the keyboard down. And he said to me, Matt, what are you going to do when you get bored? He's like, I'm happy to become a shareholder, like right at the beginning, but like, what are you going to do when you get bored? Because I've seen this happen. I said, by that time that happens, I've got a team around me who can do that, and I'll go off and find the next growth
Gotcha.
for us, which is exactly as it's panning out.
Yeah, because in your kind of business, you can do your existing. There's a lot of other business lines you can add on, right? You come up with new products, new initiatives, because you kind of just add another J curve to the business model.
Yeah,
which is that's how you can apply your thought process. Yeah,
and as we mentioned, quite often the customers that we're dealing with at the moment, the average deal size at Tractor's 300K, goes up to like $1.5 million. Like that's not insignificant. You don't borrow that kind of money on a whim. You do it because you trust the people you're borrowing it for. You've got a job for it to do.
Yeah.
And it's a relationship, right? It's not a credit card where nobody knows who you are. It's something that's quite personal.
Yeah.
And you're trying to solve a problem with it. And once you have that, and we have literally hundreds of those customers, the ability to go, hey, how else can we help? Is
for sure.
Almost infinite.
Yeah.
The challenge is actually reining it in and making sure that we're doing things that we can leverage the platform we've already built and the relationship we've got on the capital side.
Yeah. And that is always the challenge I find in a lot of businesses, is because you're doing one thing well and you see lots of tangents and go, I could probably do that well. Maybe I should do that.
Yep.
And you got to make sure you stay, on script, but still focus on growth. That's the challenge, I think, for a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses, founder businesses.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now back to the episode. We go back to Tractor Ventures. We just delve into that a little bit more. And you'd mentioned it at the start, but if you do it, what is the why, why you exist in a couple of sentences?
Sure. Yeah, look, Tractor exists to unlock possibilities for founders. And founders are a pretty broad church in our world. But ultimately, what we want to be able to do is help founders grow their businesses and do that in a way that is the right shape capital at the right time. So we started off with the lending product, or the finance product, because it was an underserved market. But ultimately, if you zoom right out, the shape of that capital and what you do with that capital inside your business has got different risks attached to it. I think as businesses scale, the problem we're trying to solve for is you've got different jobs for $1 to do.
Yeah.
And $1 is not $1, right? Sometimes it's equity risk. Yeah. Sometimes it's debt risk. And then if you blow that up, there's different types of risk even for leverage, right? Yeah. So we look at things like that. We look at what are the jobs you're trying to do in your business? How can we help finance them?
Gotcha.
And it may be equity one day. Right now it's all just debt. But ultimately to help this asset class that's not necessarily on that venture scale. And not just a lifestyle business. There's this huge group of people building scalable technology companies that have no one to identify. The challenge actually is that Tractor is a place for founders to go when you don't identify as venture-backed.
Gotcha.
And you're also not selling candles from Byron Bay. Right?
Gotcha.
You're building a real business you're ambitious.
Yeah.
But because you're not venture-backed and you don't have $20 million to shoot around like crazy, you've got different problems to solve than those type of people. So you can't even go and hang out with them because you get the wrong advice.
Yeah, for sure.
If you've got constrained capital, which they all do, you need to be quite precise with it, as opposed to venture, which is let's try 10 things and hope 2 of them work.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's really not the types of businesses that we're working with. So they're more down to earth, just methodical people, and that's why Tractor exists, to serve that group of the market.
Gotcha. And they're on a genuine sort of recurring income growth trajectory type time frame, isn't it?
Yeah, and the ones that sort of, by the time we're dealing with them, they've got millions of dollars in revenue. We're not funding people right at the beginning.
For sure.
We're funding people that have established, they know what they're doing. They've got customers. They know there's more of them, and they're happy to grow it, 20% a year to 80% a year. I mean, some of them do much more than that, but ultimately they're happy to grow consistently.
Yeah.
And happy to apply some finance to accelerate that, but not double it and triple it because that's too risky.
Gotcha. What advice would you give to someone looking to start their own business?
It took me about 40 years to figure this out, which was a while ago now. But
last week.
Quite often, I think people feel bad about if they can't do everything. You touched on it before. I need to be able to do everything. If I'm going to start a business, I need to be able to do everything. Yeah. And it took me 3 or 4 businesses to figure out that doing everything is actually makes me go slower. I'm less engaged. So it took, as I said, I turned 40, figured out that I'm just going to really double down on things I'm good at instead of feeling bad about the things I'm not good at. And it was an unlock because what it means is that you can have that conversation up front. Even with my shareholders, I'm like, this is what I'm good at. Here's the other people around me. Together we make this great team, but I'm not going to promise to do anything. So, if you know what you're good at and you know that you get diminishing returns of the other stuff, try and optimize for that, because I think society makes us, improve your weaknesses. You should get better at that. Like, why would I bring something if I'm at the bottom 10%? I might put some effort and get to the top 50% or the middle 50.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I take the thing I'm 80% at and try and make it 90%? I feels like there's just, society will tell you that you're going to get great returns from getting good at a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm just not sure that's true.
Yeah, it seems a bit of a no-brainer when you explain it, right? Like, now that I'm down in Victoria, I'll try and use a Victorian analogy, right? Like trying to turn a ruckman into a rover. It's just not going to work, right? The ruckman's 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
Rover's like 6 foot tall. You can't, you might as well leave the ruckman doing the ruckman job.
Yeah,
and the rover doing the rover job.
I think the conclusion I drew at that point in my life was probably because I'd had enough experience to go, hang on a minute. I look at my kids that are 20 and 17 and go, you could go broad or you could go deep. And like, the deeper you go, the quicker you go. Like, I think you need a bit of broad experience. You need to sort of have that width of understanding. Yeah. But sort of trying to stay as generic as possible, as long as possible, is not how you get good compounding results. You're sort of just a little bit okay at most things. Is not how you do things well, in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I run a tech business as well, and I wouldn't have known the first thing about coding. And so for me to go and learn to be a coder would be a total waste of my time, because you can outsource this. And we've got 30 coders in our business. So I don't need to be an expert. And so it's similar, right? Watch your skill, focus on that, and leave the other things to other people.
Yeah, and I think in tech it's interesting because people will often say, you need a technical co-founder. And quite often the technicality is more on the understanding the problem rather than building the solution, right? I remember that first startup I spoke about. I knew nothing about the problem domain. I know how to code. But the technicality and the nuance of creating something that the customer wanted was actually more the product person. They were the expert. They weren't a coder. Yeah. But coding, a lot of coders can solve any problem you throw at them, really. So as a founder, quite often, a lot of them will be, I can't do it because I'm not technical. I'm like, what you actually need to be able to do is describe the problems that, as you see it, and your customers have them, to someone who can take that and turn it into the craft that they do really well.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's literally put yourself in the customer's shoes. If you can translate that to a coder, that's your biggest challenge, and translate it clearly so they know what they're doing.
And I think about even now, like, co-CEO of Tractor with Jody, what is the product expertise here? Like, so my product team, when we have, like, Tractor is a software company that happens to lend money because we get a lot of data out of it, and we need that data to build the platform, and the revenue is certainly nice to run the business. But we are a software company, and having a CEO founder who was a CTO is now the first time in the CEO seat. I think my engineering team appreciate that, because I'm like, let's build the least amount of code possible. Let's not build a bunch of legacy. Let's not dig ourselves a hole. Let's really understand the problem, which quite often, I think that is a nice thing of being an ex-technical person myself. But it shouldn't stop people, entrepreneurs, from starting.
Totally agree.
If you can translate that customer problem back into not the technical solution, but certainly the technical scope.
For sure, agree. What hasn't worked?
What hasn't worked?
Bumps in the road.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. There's a few startups that we started and tried to bootstrap them and just couldn't get. We got customer revenue, but it wasn't fast enough.
Gotcha.
You can only absorb so much. Not taking salaries for a while, so I've had a few false starts there. The recruiting was a really interesting 4.5 years, which was at the beginning, I'm like, this is amazing. I'm a pretty outward going kind of guy. But it turns out that's actually an extremely repetitive thing. It's a multi-leg sales process where you got to get a customer, then you got to get the job, then you got to get a candidate, and you got to sell them and run around, and they've got to go over and over and over again. And that to me was like, I can only do certain parts of that process too. It's really good at landing customers. The CTOs would trust me because that's who I am.
Sure.
But that bit in the middle is really hard for me to do, and I really beat myself up for not being able to do the entire stack.
Gotcha.
And so, like, for me that was quite hard because it was my business. I had a co-founder, I had a business partner. I'm like, this is not working for me anymore. Like, I'm sort of I've did the first bit, but this middle bit's really difficult. So that was around the same time I realised that I'm only good at some things. So, I think that there's, and one of my early companies that I was the CTO of, I exited out of it early, and they went off to have a really great exit.
Gotcha.
And that was hard. That was hard at the time to go, this bit, which is the initial bit is up and running. We've got a lot of customers. Things are exciting. It sort of gets into that middle bit, and it was just like, I'm probably not the best person for this job, and having to have that difficult conversation, extract yourself out of something that you've been in for quite a while. Yeah, it's just difficult to do. So but it happens all the time. Yeah, like co-founder, people realizing that the value have created is starting to diminish, or whatever the case may be. It happens all the time. I think it probably should happen more often. A lot of the time, you see a lot of co-founders that are, butting heads because they can't figure out how to transition the business into its next phase. So these are just the lessons I've learned. That sort of when I built Tractor, I structured it so that it was going to solve for some of those things on day one. Yeah, which I think is hopefully has helped us avoid some of those bumps.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. It sounds like you got the roles and responsibilities very clear up front.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of businesses will wing it for a period of time, and you'll fall into your roles and responsibilities, which might not be right or wrong. And then down in the track, you've got to rip those people out and put the right people in the roles. So I guess, I think translating, I think that's what you're saying. You've got some of the pieces right at the start, which helps you in that transition phase.
Yeah. I think managing ego too. My default position is I don't know how to do any of this. Like what gives me the right to run a lending business, having written code,
gotcha.
Built a few, done some recruiting, worked for Amazon. Like I rock up and I talk to people like yourself and say, I'm coming this. I think there's two ways to start a business. You either understand it deeply, because you're, in this case, you've come out of the bank or you come out of finance world, or I rock up to the side and go, clearly there's a problem here. I don't really know anything about it, but I'm going to go solve it in a different way.
Gotcha.
But that position, my position is I don't really know what I'm doing, so I need the people around me. I need to learn. Yeah. Which stops me from sort of building this big moat around me and causing problems because I don't know what I'm doing. Like I have to pull in my advisors, I have to pull in my board, I have to pull in my co-founders to go, we need to solve this together. And I literally don't know how to do it. I've got some ideas, but don't have the experience. So I think that's the difference. And a lot of co-founders hang on too long, and it actually retards the growth rather than improves the growth. So handing things off at the right time is a skill that I think probably does take a bit of experience to understand when to
totally
do it.
Agree. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. You just got to work out what the end game is and what's the quickest path to get there. And if it's not you being the smartest guy in the room, that's fine.
And you and I are in the game of leverage, right? You know, like we are not lending all, we are we're using leverage. And how do we leverage our skill set? How do we put in how does our skill set be the 5% and get the 95 up for everything else? To me, it just like whether it's finance leverage or whether it's skill set leverage is like, I need to be able to convince the people who've got the other 95 to come and play the game with me and compensate them well and align all the things because I can't do 100%. It's just a false economy.
Yep, agree. Okay, maybe a bit of a step back now. What legacy you're living and leading? Bit of a personal one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know, like I've got a couple of boys. They're not really doing what we do. One is probably going to go off and be an electrician,
Good
which
job.
is great. But I think my legacy there is probably that same lesson we spoke about a minute ago, which is like double down on what you're really good at. And then, if my legacy is my kids can come to that conclusion sooner in their life than 40, then I think that'll be really good for them and whoever comes next.
Yeah, gotcha.
My personal mission, not the Tractor mission, my personal mission is I do like to work with a small number of people so that they can unlock their potential. Yep. So, I chair another company, I invest in a few companies, and I sort of just really enjoy watching people sort of hit their growth. Yeah. So I guess there's a few people around that I've, either invested in as the very first check as an angel investor, or whether or not, I advise them or whatever to really sort of do that. So I don't think I'm sort of a mass I don't really like doing it to squillions of people.
Gotcha.
It's just sort of just more of a concentrated group of people that really get to fly when we hang out together.
Yeah. It's quite a lot of people I chat with that had some success and found their path in their careers. They do enjoy that giving back, and they'll do it in different ways. It might be, being the chairman of a sporting club, or doing some soft mentoring, or helping out where you can. So it is important and critical, because I think we all look back at the people that pushed us the right direction and appreciate that. And if you can sort of give back in a small way, I think it totally makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, quick fire questions. What was your first job?
My first job was, I got 2 on the same day on my 15th birthday. It was Macca's.
That's good.
And a hobby shop. I got the hobby shop job because my parents bought me a radio control car, and they forgot to charge me for the controller.
Oh, really?
And I went back in and said, hey, you forgot to charge me for this. And they're like, oh, that's really honest of you. Would you like a job? And I'm
Which one did you take?
I took the job. Or which car?
You took both jobs?
Yeah, both of them on the same day.
Good on you.
So Saturdays at the hobby shop, and then throughout the week at Macca's.
I got cheap toys, cheap food.
Yeah, basically took my salary, took my wage from the thing, and then improved my radio control cars. I don't think I ever got any money from it, but they paid me in motors and
That's pretty good.
and ball bearings and things.
Piece of advice for your younger self.
Like double down on the things you're good at sooner rather than later.
Gotcha. What motivates you as a person?
What motivates me as a person? Thinking about hard problems.
Yep.
Trying to solve hard problems that have big impact.
Gotcha. What are your tips for driving long-term wealth?
So the first time I had a pretty big liquidity event, I went and reinvested it all again into illiquid early stage tech companies. Paid the mortgage off and then
That's not
reinvested the mortgage, which I think everybody does. My strategy from this point on, which to your point is spread it around. Private credit is an amazing asset class that allows you to not only take enjoy that long-term growth, but also like compound it in a relatively risk-adjusted way. So, for me, it's about the balancing between yield, reinvestment, and growth. Back in the 90s, when they were paying 10% at bank accounts, you didn't need a lot of capital to make a fair bit of money off interest, and I feel like we're there at the moment too.
Yeah, compound interest is very powerful.
Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make, whether it's in investing or just career?
I think it's not saying the thing they want to say. There's when I went to Amazon, the first thing they said to me was like, don't assume everything is done with purpose and intent, because a lot of it is just legacy.
Yeah.
So you're probably looking at something going, oh, that's clearly that way by design.
Yeah.
Quite often it's that way by default.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
if you can see something that can be improved, just say it.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. When you're not working, how do you spend your time?
Oof. When I'm working, so I listen to a lot of music. I play a little bit of music.
Gotcha.
And I ride a thing called a flight board, which is an electric foil, in the bay mostly.
Gotcha.
So it's fun. I'm learning how to do that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. What instrument do you play?
Bass guitar.
Yeah, good on you. Very good. Thanks, Matt.
Cool.
Really appreciate you coming in. If anyone's interested in connecting with Matt, you can connect with him on LinkedIn or check out tractorventures.com. Thanks again. Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.